couple of weeks ago, I uploaded a video called First Look at Supreme Ruler 2030 Beta. The devs over at Battlegoat were kind enough to give to me a key to try out the game in its current playtest form. Not quite the beta you might be used to, a earlier, more testing-oriented form. Not intended to be playable. But I went through it either way, and I showed it off to the community in the current state it was in because, well, they said we could do it. The video itself is about an hour long, as I tried to make it very comprehensive without going too in-depth on any one topic. Well, Chris from Battlegoat Studios actually watched through the entire thing twice, and he left a big comment filled with things he wanted to respond to from in the video, and some of these are updates and some of these are information that we didn't really already know, so I wanted to go over those responses as well as maybe some other things that have happened since then and update you on things that were in that video. So one other big thing that's happened since then, other than Chris's reply and any updates that may have happened, is that Chris actually got into a video call with me and we spoke for about 3 hours about Supreme Ruler and a bunch of other stuff. So there's other things from that call that I can use to tell you some things about that he didn't necessarily address in his comments. So one of the first things I wanted to address here was about 2 minutes in, I'm speaking about the tutorial of the game and how Chris said that Galactic Ruler had, in his opinion at the time of its release, the best tutorial that he felt they ever made in the history of their games. Well, I hopped into the tutorial here and I went ahead and made some comments about how I thought that this tutorial was even better than Galactic Rulers. And one of the first things he ended up mentioning in our call was that he agrees and he thinks that it's 110% better than Galactic Ruler's tutorial, which is good. You know, it's good that the tutorials are becoming better and more approachable and better at teaching things. If we skip another 2 minutes or so to near the 5-minute mark in the video, we reached the point where I'm looking at the campaigns that are going to be in 2030. The 4 campaigns, and I took a moment to highlight the funniness that the Russia campaign is the USSR campaign. At least that's how it was named in this version. This has been fixed and has been acknowledged by Chris. Soviet campaign, oops, we'll get the name update. That was an oopsie. I think it's already fixed in the current updated version of the playtest. There has been an update that I have gotten and haven't done much looking into. But also, I said something in this video where I said that it was already communicated by them that post-release, they were going to add more campaigns. I said this because I remember, I swear to God, I remember some posts of Chris saying something along the lines of that the opportunity is there, the possibility to add campaigns post-release. Apparently, this is not a plan. Maybe it was mentioned, maybe it wasn't, maybe it's Maybelline, I don't know. But apparently, they are not planning to add any more, which is unfortunate, and that the current campaigns, aren't done, which I already knew, which is why I didn't show them off very in-depth. But they do plan to add more content for the 4 campaigns listed after it releases. So even the release version, the finished version of the campaign you're getting, isn't going to be all there is, because they're going to expand on these 4 campaigns, even if they're not going to add new ones. But maybe new ones can be added via modding. Modding's always filled in SRU. Maybe it'll do the same here. I'm realizing that I think he responded to some of this out of order, but I'm going to try to put it in order for you. So over here, you can see that I'm looking at the scenario settings for a game of Supreme Ruler 2030, and I saw this cool new button that said Allow Government Change. And I was getting pretty happy about that. I was like, wow, we're going to be able to change our governments. That's so cool. And I love this. I love this. He says, you'll be disappointed to know that this is not a changed feature. When on, switching to dictatorship is possible with enough military support. If off, you just lose if you fail an election. Changes to some of this are being considered. So I just find it incredible and hilarious that he heard me get excited about something and straight up just rolled up with the bad news. I feel like most developers would just be silent about this. Like, oh yeah, just... Anyway, next point. Misunderstanding, doesn't matter. But he just rolled up with, sorry to let you know, that's not a new feature. We just made it a button. Now it's something you can turn on or off so that if you lose an election, if you turn it off, you'll just lose immediately. Whereas if it's on, just how it works in SRU, if you have enough military support, you become a dictatorship. If you go to about 13 and a half minutes in, I'm talking about this interesting water effect that we have going on here, and I'll let you hear a little slice of it. That is actually animated, and I don't know what they're trying to simulate here, but this is definitely a creative choice that I'm still not sure how I feel about yet. Make sure to let me know what you guys think about this fog. So basically, it's not supposed to be fog. I learned after speaking with him in a video call, I learned this is supposed to be a simulation, an animation of the waves on the ocean. And the reason for this being implemented is that Supreme Ruler Ultimate players are always asking for enhanced graphics and more visuals and things like that. And they thought, well, how can we go ahead and try to improve the view of the oceans as well? So that's what it's supposed to be. But personally, I have come to the conclusion that I don't really like this wave animation, not because I think it looks bad, but because I think it's too gray. It's too close to the colors of the ships. So when you're not this zoomed in, for me anyway, I don't have the best vision. It might be different if you have 20/20 vision, but I find that it's harder to see my units with this effect underneath. Thankfully, I did learn that there is a checkbox where you can just turn this off. So if you don't like this, no worries, you could turn it off. And you'll see in all of my new videos, maybe even one of the ones from last week, I'm not sure, that it's now off and I no longer have it on. And you can do the same. So this next part, later in the minute, I'm actually looking at the graphics and I'll let myself describe what I was thinking at the time, and I'll follow up with more information. Look at this, we have like modern drones. Look at all the updated graphics on everything. They really worked on these unit models, and you can't just say that they imported all this directly from Galactic Ruler. While I'm sure some of this is from Galactic Ruler, some of this must have had to be made, at least most of it, for this game specifically. So that's me just being impressed by graphics. However, maybe it's me being a little too impressed by graphics and just trying to provide an opposite to the tone I've seen of things just being mass imported from Galactic Ruler, especially assets. And, well, here comes Chris again with the, actually, no, we didn't rebuild more of this. Like, actually, most of this is SRU models, but we just put them in DX11 and rendered them better. So here he is to provide the bad news to my good assumptions that these are actually more reused, which isn't bad in itself because they do look notably better, and the graphics still have room to be improved, which is something that they have clarified, which is something that I can see, which is something that they're constantly tinkering with as this goes on. Art is never the first thing to be completed after all, nor is optimization. So there's definitely more improvements to come, and I just wanted to share, once again, just Chris coming in with that one thing developers probably wouldn't say, that they would just let you say and just move on, like, oh, okay, yeah, he can think that. This is another moment where I'm going to let myself do the speaking before I follow up with more information. Oh, we have updated visual indicators for movement that looks a lot nicer. Actually, looks a hell of a lot nicer. The animations, I don't know how well you can see this, of just moving from hex to hex. Follow this carrier. Holy wow. And turning? Wow, these animations are way beyond anything I've ever seen in Supreme Ruler Ultimate. So, apparently this was something that Chris went ahead and showed off. He kind of mentioned here that, oh, unit banking looked cool, but he followed up with me further in our video call and whatnot to let me know he actually showed that off to George to be like, oh, look at his reaction to the carriers banking. This was an animation that was on the ships in Galactic Ruler. This is something that they are proud of, their new animations, and I think they look really cool, and I just wanted to highlight that because I find it funny that they found it interesting or amusing to see my reaction on it. I think I have pretty balanced reactions for good and bad. I think I go at it from all angles when I talk about the game and things that I'm trying to be critical of and trying to analyze. And I just find it pretty nice and refreshing that Chris approaches both the good and the bad equally enthusiastically without any real negativity to it. Now, I don't remember exactly where I mentioned it in the video. It probably comes up once or twice, but especially in a prior video where I talk about the AI in Supreme Ruler 2030. This is not something I knew when I recorded any video prior to this one, so I actually re-rendered a note into the AI look one, that the military AI is strangely passive. It doesn't do things first. It doesn't deploy units by itself. It's like it's waiting for something. It doesn't go on offensives. It doesn't move around a lot. It's not very aggressive. And he noted here AI being passive, known issue due to other ongoing changes, work in progress. And I've been able to see the vast amount of features and new systems they've been adding into this game thanks to being on the playtest and being able to speak with Chris. And I can tell you it's a lot, and a lot of these features are still in progress, and when you have something new and complicated in progress, older things can break, especially more base things like AI. I try to note it everywhere that this beta is not just a beta, this is a playtest beta. This is a build of the game that almost no developer would ever let you see, and to not be too critical if something is bugged or broken, because this is much different than releasing a stable release version of a game and having AI be this broken. And the thing is, in SRU, with the French trying to sail to Indochina going through St. Petersburg, AI was this kind of broken at one point. But here, it's pre-release, and it's identified as a bug, but it's only caused by other changes. It will be fixed according to this. And now that he's identified it, now that I've showed off the current version of it, now that we're talking about it now, we all know if it doesn't get fixed, they're going to get an earful, and they know it. Oh, they know it. So if you're feeling turned off or just not happy with the state of the AI as you see, especially the military AI, I would say don't worry too much. It's identified. It's because it's in a playtest. It's not just something that has a problem because, it's not supposed to be done yet. But so long as we can acknowledge that it does need to be finished up, it does need to be worked on, and bring this into the future, we can avoid being overly critical about something that they know is not done and needs to come after something else in the order of operations in their development, and something that we can keep an eye on leading up to release to see how it improves and maybe give suggestions on how it could be improved further, or any tools or other things to control the AI that we might like to see. I jumped to about 17 minutes in. You can see the United States here having Trump as a president, some weird population numbers. This is another thing I pointed out as being weird, clearly just due to the status of being in a playtest. Game's not done, as we said. They are still getting things ready and prepared and getting the scenario finished. And he mentioned population leaders and other data errors. There are lots of these. The data review is a big part of the current development work. So this is going on. This is something that they are working on and something that will be updated. I don't want to use the word fix because I feel like too many commenters I'm seeing that have played SRU are already looking at a in development product as being broken when it's just in development. Like, have you seen SRU when it wasn't done? Probably not, because there wasn't content creators pushing out content about it. It probably looked the same, and I don't think I would have called that broken either, simply not finished yet, All right, so this next part, I will once again let me from the past do the speaking before I follow up with new information. The actual ownership now. Let's go to show ownership. As we can see, this is what I was talking about in the main menu. Everything is visual now, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of that. Mostly just because I don't know what the symbols are. All these worlds look very similar to each other, and I have very poor vision. The tab that we had before, where I could just pull up all of this, but it actually wrote out what it was really nice. These little things, these little variances here are too tiny for me to really understand what the hell these are. So this is something that I personally have a problem with. I don't think anyone else has really made comments out of my viewers that were leaving comments. They were focused on other parts of the game. This is something that I talked about in my conversation over call with Chris. It's something that when we were looking at the game together and we needed to turn on ownership to go look at certain things, I couldn't find the ownership button because I couldn't tell what one of those little tiny worlds it was supposed to be. And so he actually showed me that in the next playtest from what I have, this is completely redone. Every single one of these buttons is back to the list format, but also has the visual next to it. And I can tell you, I can't show it because I don't have that playtest yet. That will come next, and I'll try to show it off when I get the chance. It looks much more modern because you have visuals and you have text. The whole UI for it looks more modern now than it did in SRU. The only one that hasn't changed is for the resources. In the version he showed me, the resources are still these little symbols, but he said that he wasn't even sure if those should be changed because those resource symbols, as we can see them on the top of the screen there, they're baked into SRU players' brains. We know what those symbols are. We know what they mean. And so he asked me whether or not I thought they should be changed. And I said yes. I said yes, I think that they should also be in list format because, well, number one, consistency, right? Why is everything going to be in a list with visual indicators, but one of them is only going to be visual indicators? That's not very consistent. But number two, and I thought this one was pretty important, is Supreme Ruler is always getting new players. My community especially is filled with new players. I know I've been getting a lot more of the experienced players showing up and commenting now that I believe I am the only channel posting critical information and analysis of the game, maybe other than Battlegoat's channel. But the individuals that I play the game with, that join me from my community, the individuals that I see in my comments most often are new players or prospective players getting into the game or that want to get into the game. And I try to think about it from their perspective too. Would they know what all these symbols mean? I don't think so. Would you know if you were a new player? Just a question for new players only. See these symbols at the top? Let me blow it up a little bit more. Would you know what all those symbols meant? If you just saw them laid out with nothing to go off of, would you be able to say with certainty you knew what you were about to click on and see the map for? Because I don't think so. I don't necessarily think that this one that's I think supposed to be like bread is that obviously supposed to be agriculture because it's so tiny. I don't think the tire is supposed to obviously be rubber. Most grand strategy games don't have rubber as a resource, so you come into this and you're gonna be like, oh, what's that? A tire? Some sort of industrial component, I guess? But you wouldn't know. The wood, the symbol, you know, we're talking about tiny symbols. It could just be hard to see them too. I think the oil one is pretty obvious. I think uranium's pretty obvious, electricity. But there's like two different types of rocks there that you're looking at. There's hardly a difference in visuals between Indian consumer goods that could tell you without already knowing what the difference is. Military goods, obviously bullets. I personally didn't think that the symbols would be enough. As someone that sees a lot of new players start the game, hears their concerns, has to teach them how to play because I make so many guides answering their questions. I interact with primarily new players. I think the symbols plus the list for down here with the map filters for everything would be the best solution, not just for consistency, but also for the approachability of what I believe to be a large part of the player base and upcoming player base of the Supreme Ruler titles. While I'm on this screen, I also want to demonstrate something else that was mentioned by Chris, the minister button at the bottom, flagged for review. So as you can see, in this version of the playtest, which this is the previous version, you can see that the minister button has been moved from the top to the bottom. And I went on a little tangent about that, how I thought that was unnecessary, didn't help anything, and it was just going to confuse experienced players. And not only was that flagged for review, that was changed in the next update, the literal next playtest update. The minister button was now at the top again. Chris mentioned to me in call that it was probably going to end up at the top again anyway. It's just that at one point they looked at the UI without the minister button and then they added it back. And so it was just thrown to the bottom of the list and they didn't really think about it at the time. So once I pointed out, he went, oh yeah, that's common sense. That should be up there. We'll change that right now. And it got pushed up to the top in the current version. So if that bothered you remotely as much as it bothered me, it's fixed now. Now, while I was talking about the game, I was talking about the loyalty system and what I knew about it. And oh, here's just a little fun fact. Here's a little icon of loyalty. And I said, oh, this looks like a placeholder graphic. This looks a little too simplistic. I doubt this stuff will ship. Chris confirmed with me in call, yes, that is a placeholder graphic. He's like, oh yeah, you know, someone had to make it. The artist was busy, so I had to make it. So it's not going to look the prettiest. So yeah, that will be changed, that little thing. But I was looking at the loyalty map and I was describing the new loyalty system to the best that I understood it. He did reply with, I think some of it works a bit different than you described. I made a note, we need to post a better explanation ourselves, but there are some pieces missing still. And there are pieces missing still. Everything is not quite in place in the playtest to make this function as it will on release. It does function, it does work. It's not broken, it's just not complete yet. However, based on the conversation we've had and everything I said here, from what I can tell, everything that I did say in this video about the loyalty system is completely accurate. However, some of the things that I analyzed and stated about it are subject to change. I don't know exactly what, but it has been made clear to me that some of these things that I expressed could be problematic in a full release version are already flagged for review and probably going to undergo some changes. Maybe not all of it, but at least a decent chunk of it. Now, probably my biggest negative thing that I went over in this video, in my opinion, the thing I had the biggest problems with and that I got some agreement with in my community, that this sucks, which is the fact that the build facility screen, as well as other very vital screens that are very commonly used, at least in my community, we use these buttons all the time, is now moved to share space with the minimap instead of being with the department that it relates to. So you can have this screen open, the build facilities, without even having anything open with which you can build from. They even moved the way you look at facilities over there that are in a country, and I actually thought that they changed it because there's a new screen for that on the left. Not new, it's just moved position again. And the one that I usually referred to has been moved over to the right as well. Very important screens, as well as the ability to see what all the nations are producing and exporting and whatever, which, fun fact, I was speaking to Chris and he said, oh yeah, nobody really uses that. I was like, really? We use that all the time. He's like, oh, I usually use the market condition and the prices here to get the idea. Do you not do that? I'm like, we do that to get an idea, but we usually look at the grand scope of things. You know, it's used as a reference over here, but then we pull up the data on who exports what, how much of it, who produces what, because that's pretty vital to know when you're trying to find resources that are already built, and when you're trying to crack into a market or compete in a market, you know who you're competing with and how to go about maybe detaching resources from somebody, because you could track who is reliant on colonies and whatnot. And so that for me is a really, really used thing in my community. We use that all the time in our PvPs. It's a very valuable tool, I would say, just as valuable as the build facilities screen. And I say that because the build facilities is actually like a two-step thing. There's two ways to go about it. You can go through the menus, as I'm looking at here, but you can also right-click on the map and hit build and go through a less organized menu to do the same thing. Just as this was the biggest negative thing that I expressed in my video, it got a response from him. It was flagged for review, priority increased. We spoke about it in the call as well, and I realized it's not as simple as moving it back. It really, really is not as simple as moving it back, unfortunately, because the whole design of this UI is not based around convenient, like minimalistic, organized looking, like boxed, you know, neat looking UI. It's based around having the ability to have things minimized and maximized, hence these minimize, maximize buttons that we did go over in the video. I've explored that more and seen that they are quite an important point and a pivotal decision, probably point of the decisions that went into the UI here. It's a big part of it. So you can move it back, but then you don't have room for all these other things that are baked into the UI. And so unfortunately, my biggest problem is not going to be a remotely simple fix if it can be changed at all. So this is definitely the time for you guys to express, how do you feel about needing to open the build facility screens manually, in addition to opening your department on the left that you want to build into and having to look from one side of the screen to the other. Watch my head movements. This is where I have to look at the I'm sorry, wait, no, let me get this full screened. This is where I have to look at the resources and whatnot. This is where I have to look at all this. I don't know how dramatic that looks from this angle, but I really have to go to opposite sides of the screen. That's a little jarring on the neck when I'm trying to work on the same thing. And I really, truly hate this design. I really prefer the way it was in SRU. But this is the time to express your thoughts, because it's not just about what I think. It's about what everybody thinks here and about what the devs can make happen here, because this is a standout point. This is not something that was just quick corrected and that's it. It won't get changed if everybody's okay with it. So if you see ways to improve it, or if you have an opinion at least on what this is, definitely leave that below, because this is a big one. There is more stuff that I got the opportunity to learn about in the current playtest and the game from Chris during our call, but I have responded to everything that was in that comment that he left, as well as included some of the extra details I learned from getting in call with him. This has been a follow-up to that first look with more information, more details, some clarifications. I have a whole growing list already, but if you want to see any coverage about Supreme Ruler 2030 or, just any kind of video, if you have any ideas, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to, if not answer them directly, make a video covering whatever it is you want to see from the playtest. Because, again, I think I'm the only one making content like this. I think everybody else that has access to the playtest is either just a tester or makes more Let's Play style videos or streams. So I'm here to give you the content. I'll pump out as much of it leading up to release as you guys can give me the ideas for. I hope this video has been helpful to you or that you've enjoyed watching it. If you want to join a community that has a lot of SRU content and soon to be 2030, check out the community server in the description below. That is where we play our PvP series and where you might be able to find someone to play or talk about the games with yourself. If you like what I'm doing and you'd like to offer any kind of support, look in the description under the video or at the buttons under the video. You have a join button if you'd like to become a channel member, where you get access to deleted scenes and uncut clips, including an uncut version of my campaigns video that had some deleted scenes cut out of it, where I gave my opinions and my thoughts on the functionality and playability of Supreme Ruler's campaigns. Same rewards go for Patreon and our Gilded server subs that you can join as well. Or if you'd like to leave a one-time donation, consider leaving a super thanks by hitting the thanks button under the video. These videos don't make that much, and fan funding is the #1 source of revenue that keeps this channel and all the content on it going. I won't ask too much, but I figured I'd ask today. Thank you to everyone that already does stuff like that. And thank you guys very much for watching if you made it this far, and I hope I'll see you on the next one.